children and the generations to come. Thank you for your voice and your tears and your laughter and all the reminders of why we take the next breath and move toward the future. In a good way, we ask you to come. Oh. Face to the north, please. To the spirits of the north, to the ancestors of all the wind nations, thank you. Thank you for carrying this wind, and thank you for carrying this breath so that we as one indigenous tribe of the earth, whether we're two-legged or one-legged or winged ones or whatever we are one tribe of this earth. And we thank you for sharing that one breath with us, the one heartbeat. We thank you, Wind Nation elders, for all that you do to share your love and compassion and honor with us. We receive it in a good way and know that we stand toward you as one people to be of service in the next breath of the future. In a good way, we ask you to come and be with us this day. Oh. And take a deep breath, please. And just center to the ancestors of the universe, to all that is above and all that is below and all that is between. Know that we come in a good way with great honor and respect and love and compassion. Know that we come offering these things. Know that we stand as one people facing the light and the sun and the future to be of service of any of the wishes that you may ask of us. And in a good way, we ask you to receive us in that way. Oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Yona. So, speaking of honor and gratitude, I have the amazing honor right now to introduce the woman who's going to lead us in our opening song this morning. And one of the things I've always loved about Jubilee is that you hear, you find out, you have this experience that God has been in your life on the radio all your life. And since we play so many covers. And another reminder that I had many years ago now was that you also find God at the grocery store or going to the grocery store. As I was approaching Earth Fair one day, I heard this amazing song happening. It really sounded like the voice of the goddess herself. And over several years, I would hear this woman sing, going into Earth Fair and leaving Earth Fair, and we got to know each other. And since then, I've seen her at many different kinds of venues singing. This is an amazing soul, and I really am glad you're here with us to lead us in song this morning. Rhoda Weaver.
Unmuted?
Yes, you are. Can hear you. Good to see you.
You too. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no racism turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land.
Ooh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That's so beautiful. And that was also our time to feed the hungry. So there's links in the chat if you wanted to feed the hungry during that time as well. And since I'm on, I'm going to introduce the amazing Roger Helm, who has been such a big part of our Earth team over the last many years and such a just active member of Jubilee and works really passionately for climate justice and was I'm going to call you a bigwig. That's what my old boss used to call people, like a bigwig at the Fish and Wildlife Service. So Roger, thank you so much for sharing a gift.
Thank you, Jackie. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Good morning, fellow Jubilants and friends. I'm Dr. Roger Helm, a retired biologist. My goodness, there is so much hammering on our psyche these days. I find that when I am mindful and following Tolle's advice of living in the now, my life is really good. But the instant I step out of the now and contemplate the future, oh my, life is unsettling, if not downright scary. Next month, I will teach a short course focused on the second biggest challenge we face in America today, climate change. Oh, advancing. Of course, our biggest challenge is getting people with a conscience to the polls. To eradicate the deadly virus that has infected our national government. Then we at least have a chance of saving humanity and nature from the devastation of climate change. Having a little trouble, sorry. This morning, I will flash before your eyes some of what I will delve into in my short course. Our deeper dive into these subjects will help you. Oh, I'm having a tough time this morning, sorry. Our deeper dive into these subjects will help you understand the reality and power of climate change and the solutions at hand. Each session will conclude with pictures of nature in Africa, Antarctica, Nepal, and elsewhere that I hope will ignite the awe that nature can stir in our souls and leave you feeling good. The magnitude of the destruction. Oh, I'm having a tough time this morning.
Do you want to stop the share and start over? Or share it in a different way so that you can do the slideshow better?
Okay, now it's finally working off this way, so we'll go back. I'm sorry, folks. But anyway, climate change, the magnitude and destructive force of the fires, storms, floods, and droughts the world has been experiencing since the beginning of this century are unprecedented in human history. If humanity chooses to put on headphones and ignore these screams of Mother Nature, present and future generations will suffer grievously, and civilization as we know it will be in extreme peril. Climate, unlike weather, is remarkably sensitive to small changes in temperature. Weather changes 10 or more degrees each day and over 100 degrees in a year. Yet storms and such tend to remain somewhat similar year to year. In contrast, the climate by just changing a few degrees is essentially injecting steroids into the weather. Think of climate like water. Just a degree increase or decrease, and it changes states, going from ice to water, from water to steam, from calm seas to raging storms, from sprinkles to deluges, from sparks to infernos. The world's average temperature is just up a bit of over 1 degree Celsius in the past century. Yet we are already experiencing extreme melting in the Arctic and Greenland, record heat waves, catastrophic wildfires, and unprecedented destruction from storms and floods. Another degree or two average increase in the weather, and the chaos unleashed will change the world beyond humanity's coping ability. If you think we have problems now, what to do? What to do? Follow the ostrich? Follow Herman Wouk's advice. When in danger, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. Or consider what Superman was taught. With enormous power comes enormous responsibility. Humans continue to dramatically change our planet, and we are changing the climate. We have demonstrated our power to act like a vengeful God. Now it is time we demonstrate the responsibility to act like a loving God. We have the tools to reduce the steroidal injections we are administering to the climate and nature. Do we have the will? While photographing the animals and landscapes of Antarctica, Nepal, Africa, and elsewhere, I typically feel reverential respect, mixed with fear and wonder. In short, the definition of awe. I find the raw beauty, power, symmetry, and interconnectedness of the critters and their homes mesmerizing. Starting Monday, November 23rd, and going for the following 3 Mondays, I will host a 1-hour Zoom session. The first part of the evening will focus on relatable information and data exploring our rapidly changing climate, why we know it is happening, what impacts to expect, and what can be done. For the remainder of each session, I will share my photographs and visceral experiences from visiting other continents. My goal of this course is to educate folks on the challenge of climate change, to inspire them to take action to address this challenge, and hopefully have everyone leave with a good vibe from the awe that nature's magnificence inspires in our being. I hope you'll be able to join us. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Roger. So beautiful.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
For the beauty of the earth, indeed. So coming to you from Jubilee today, it's Warren and myself. Warren is going to be lighting candles as we pray. As Rhoda sang, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. That's disrupting the status quo. Let's also disrupt the status quo of prayer by simply breathing. No other words. Breathing in and breathing out. If you have specific prayer requests, type them in the chat, and that way we can make sure that we can put them on the wall. Breathe deeply. Perhaps you can disrupt the status quo just by being yourself. Breathe deeply. Oh, yeah.
In every one of us to be wise, find your heart, open up both your eyes. We can all know everything without ever knowing why. It's in every one of us by and by. So chat each other up. Send a little love out there. It's in every one of us. I just remembered, it's like I've been sleeping for years. I'm not awake as I can be, but my seeing's better. I can see through the tears. I am realizing that I bought this ticket and watching only half of the show. There's scenery and lights and a cast of thousands who all know what I know, and it's good that it's so. It's in every one of us to be wise. Find your heart, open up both your eyes. We can all know everything without ever knowing why. It's in every one of us by and by. It's in every one of us by and by. Oh yeah. And one of the people it's in is this next dude who's going to share one of his songs that I know is going to be inspiring and deep reaching in some way or other, because that's just what Brian does. Brian, welcome.
Morning, Jubilee. Viva la jubilación! Jubilantes. You've heard me sing a song called I'm Gonna Walk It With You. I'm not gonna sing that this morning, but I'm gonna sing a song in very much the same style. What's that? Yes. So anyway, this is a song that I wrote this summer in tribute to John Lewis. And even though we're not all in the same room and you're all muted, it's a very easy audience participation. The chorus is very simple. Repeat after me. Because it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into good trouble. And that line, good trouble, happens at the end of every single line in the song. So you've really got no excuse. You just learned how to sing the song. No excuse. And the last line in the song is his name, the meanings of of the different parts of his name, John, Robert, and Lewis. John translates to God is gracious. Robert means, one of the translations is bright or glory. And the surname Lewis is Latin for victory. So the last line in the song is essentially his name translated as divine grace and bright victory. So for John Robert Lewis, this is good trouble. A brave man told us to seek out good trouble. Now I'm starting to see what it's all about. Good trouble. When the law is wrong, it needs to be broken. Good trouble, arms laid down and souls be awoken. Good trouble, he said it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble, now justice lives in the moment of choice. Good trouble, when you break your silence, use your voice. Good trouble, but it will not do simply to awaken. Good trouble, until to the streets we've taken. Good trouble, because it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble, I am bound to passively resist. Good trouble, I won't swing a punch, but I will raise my fist. Good trouble, so you can read me my rights and bind my wrists. Good trouble, from Selma to Minneapolis. Good trouble, because it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble. I can't think this is just a one-time fight. Good trouble, the man in the house said I am the light. Good trouble, so I'll keep on shining every day of my life. Good trouble, and together we'll shine 1,000,000 times more bright. Good trouble, yes, it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble, resistance against the tyrant king. Good trouble, it's not a riot, it's an uprising. Good trouble, am I willing to look the devil in the eye? Good trouble, is there a cause for which I'm willing to die? Good trouble, yes, it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble, well now, he stood with honor and dignity. Good trouble, and he spoke these words to you and to me. Good trouble, and I'll tell you what his name means to me. Good trouble, divine grace and bright victory. Good trouble, because it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble, oh yes, it's up to you to speak what's true and to get into. Good trouble.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, like that. Thank you, Brian. So here are these ancient words. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. Otherwise, the skins burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. Geniuses are always marginalized to one degree or another. Someone wholly invested in the status quo is unlikely to disrupt it. This is ancient wisdom and holy word. Thanks be to all that is wise and holy. All creation is wisdom and holy word. All creation sings of wisdom and God. Hallelujah. Thank God and everybody else. Aho.
Aho, thank God. So, wow, so much already today. So, in 1517, a Catholic monk and professor of moral theology had a little argument with the Catholic leadership. His concern was over indulgences, which were certificates that had to be purchased to reduce divine punishment for sins. Most of the buyers of these get out of purgatory free cards were poor peasants. The story goes that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the door of a church, and that this act marked the beginning of the Reformation, when protesters, Protestants, broke off from the Catholic Church. So this is an important story, but it's not the whole story. The Reformation, it turns out, was already underway when Luther wrote his 95 Theses. Humanist theologian Erasmus, English Bible translator John Wycliffe, Czech theologian Jan Hus, and Italian pastor Peter Waldo were among the many writers and thinkers leading reform movements before Luther. Martin Luther definitely disrupted the status quo of Catholicism, but he stepped into a milieu of disruptive behavior. Reform movements were bubbling up across Europe. What does this tell us about disrupting the status quo? Does it depend on that one brave voice shouting in the wilderness? Or is there a more communal aspect to disruption? Now, there was this piece of technology that is often credited as laying the groundwork for the Protestant Reformation. And if we were all in a room together, I would ask you, does anybody remember what that was? And you'd raise your hand and I'd point at you and I'd say, that's right, the printing press. And who invented the printing press? Anybody? Gutenberg, that's right. And what was the first book he printed? The Gutenberg Bible. Before this, Bibles were written by hand, so they were few and far between, and only scholars had access to them. The idea that the Bible could get out into the hands of people who weren't scholars to be read and interpreted was exciting and disturbing. Disruptive technology did not begin in Silicon Valley. As it turns out, it didn't begin in Germany either. Turns out Gutenberg wasn't actually the first to use a printing press, and his Bible wasn't the first book printed. Hundreds of years before Gutenberg, people in both China and Korea were developing typeset printers to produce Buddhist sacred texts that the monks were hoping to save from the invading Mongol armies. 200 years before Gutenberg developed his press, a Buddhist minister in Korea, Cho Yun-e, developed the same technology that Gutenberg would later become famous for to print a huge book of Buddhist wisdom, so big it took him years to print it. Did Gutenberg know about this Korean invention? It is possible that technology traveled from east to west via the movements of Genghis Khan, who created the largest empire in human history. But it's also possible that the same technology emerged in two different places without knowledge of each other. This mimics a concept known as multiple discovery or simultaneous invention, which is the hypothesis that most scientific discoveries and inventions are made independently and more or less simultaneously by multiple scientists and inventors. The concept of multiple discovery opposes a more traditional view, which is the heroic theory of invention and discovery. White Westerners love the idea of the Lone Rangers, those individual men, almost always men, in history who stepped out and in an instant changed the world. The trouble is, the narrative is more fantasy than history. Change happens in communities, and it happens over time. It happens not when one person has a new idea, but when the ideas are bubbling up and surfacing all through a society, and then they get articulated in a way that harnesses that energy that's already moving. We see this in more recent history with that other Martin Luther King Jr., named for the famous Protestant reformer. Now, it's easy to look back and sort of think that the whole civil rights movement coalesced under the poetic power of Dr. King's words. First, there was Dr. King, and then there was a movement. Or as Julian Bond pointedly quipped, the public's understanding of that struggle boils down to Rosa sat down, Martin stood up, and then the white folks saw the light and saved the day. The truth is, there was a movement first, and then there was Dr. King. How many of you know the story of Septima Poinsett Clark, born in the 1800s? She was an educator from South Carolina who developed the citizenship schools of the Highlander Folk School, which encouraged African Americans to harness the power of literacy and education and civics to gain civil rights and to empower their own communities. Or what about Dorothy Height, who was known as the godmother of the civil rights movement because of her extensive involvement in the fight beginning in the 1930s. She was a pioneer in the use of political organization, and she influenced leaders like Dr. King and John Lewis. Or in 1931, Miss Johnny Carr of Montgomery, Alabama, raised money for the 9 young African-American men wrongly accused in the Scottsboro trials. She later became involved in the Montgomery bus boycott. And speaking of the Montgomery bus boycott, 9 months before Rosa Parks, and I just realized that's the gestation period, 9 months before Rosa Parks, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin resisted giving up her seat on a crowded Montgomery bus for a white passenger. And it was Claudette's actions that were the inspiration for the planned protest conducted by Rosa Parks later that year. I could go on and on, but you get the point. Lots of people in lots of places, many of them women who get little recognition, were working to expand human rights for Black folk in this country well before Harry Truman desegregated the armed forces in 1948, or Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, or the bus boycott that lasted 13 months throughout 1955. Now, it was during the bus boycott that the 26-year-old Reverend King was elected to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association. You can examine any major movement for justice in history, and you'll find a similar narrative. Disrupting the status quo is neither a one-time event nor a one-person story. Disruption is that moment when the wave crashes after the tide has built it up and caused it to crest. So if Dr. King provided a crest to the civil rights movement, the decades of community organizing that preceded him were that wave that pushed him up. A Course in Miracles says, only infinite patience produces immediate results. Breathe that in. Only infinite patience produces immediate results. So there's no doubt that 2020 has disrupted the status quo of life in and beyond these United States. And I don't need to re-enumerate all the ways why, all the industries and organizations that have been disrupted. But faith communities are certainly among them. We've all been upended by this virus, and it's been painful. People have died, lots of people. Businesses have died. And before it's over, I have no doubt that there will be more pain, more trauma, and more loss. Friday was the highest number of new cases in the United States since the pandemic began. At the same time, this pause in business as usual created space for that different kind of disruption that we've been talking about, the uprising for racial equity. And like the historic disruptions I mentioned earlier, this didn't suddenly emerge after George Floyd's murder. The Black Lives Matter movement started in 2013 and has spent 7 years organizing at the grassroots level. The books that so many of us have had time to read this year, from White Fragility to How to Be an Anti-Racist, were written before the authors could have imagined this year and what would happen. A diverse community created the energy of this wave that crested with Floyd's death, and then the uprising came crashing down on America. The water is stirred up, and we're all left with the question, what do we do once the status quo has been disrupted? So in today's gospel reading, Jesus, right before the reading begins, has been questioned about why he eats with sinners and why his disciples don't fast like those who follow John the Baptist. In other words, why is he disrupting the status quo, both of his own Jewish tradition from which he comes and of the Reform movement, John's movement, into which he was baptized? He wasn't following anybody's rules. Jesus responds with these two very short parables. You can't put an unshrunk patch of new cloth on an old garment, and you can't put new wine into old wineskins. Now, since most of us don't repair our clothes anymore, unfortunately, and now we buy our wine in bottles or boxes, let's pause and consider these images. If you have an old, well-worn piece of clothing, it's been washed and dried many times, and it's shrunk as much as it's going to shrink. And if you take a new piece of cloth and use it to patch the old, and then you wash and dry it, the new is going to shrink, and there you're going to have a bigger tear in your old piece of clothing. So wine used to be actually stored in animal skins because they're flexible and they can stretch and grow. So as the wine ferments and expands, the new wineskin will expand with it. Over time, the wine stops expanding and the skins become older and more brittle. So if you're to put new, still expanding wine into these older, less flexible skins, once the fermentation got underway, the brittle skin would burst and you'd lose all your new wine. And that would be tragic. So we're living in a time of new wine. 2020 has been the grape crushing year. The fermentation is just getting underway. Old wineskins are bursting right and left because they can't hold this new reality. And I believe before this era of change has passed, we're going to see the bursting of lots of old institutions, and many faith communities will be among them. So what about us? Jubilee has an origin story of being the new wine, of no longer fitting into the old wineskins of the Methodist Church, of bursting out and finding a new skin where it could ferment and grow. So how do we adapt that part of our DNA into this new time of fermentation? What is the next generation of Jubilee? Will we fall into the pattern of so many movements for change and become inflexibly conformed to the shape of the old wine that used to be the new wine? Jubilee's wineskins may not be as old as some of the other religious wineskins out there, but there is still a risk that we could be so in love with those beautiful grapes crushed by Howard and his first motley crew of winemakers that we miss an opportunity to taste a new batch. Or to the parable's point, we don't want to carry a new round of fermentation in a container that isn't flexible enough to keep growing and changing shape. When I think of the DNA of Jubilee, I can't help but think of Howard's life as a jazz musician. Jazz is all about innovation and improvisation. Now, you can try to play a song exactly note to note the way your favorite jazz musician played it, but is that really jazz? Jesus disrupted the status quo of his day in so many ways. He was like the great jazz musician of religion, riffing off Judaism. Like us, he was living in a time of enormous religious, political, and social upheaval. So here we are. Grapes are being crushed in 2020. Religious grapes, political grapes, social and economic grapes, crushed. No institutions will emerge unchanged. So the question is, what kind of container will be flexible enough to give these crushed grapes room to ferment into something delicious, intoxicating even? I really believe this, that Jubilee has the opportunity to be one of the containers for the new wine. It's in our DNA. But this is a choice we have to make. Our status quo has been so disrupted that it's tempting to want to go back to some form of normal as soon as possible. But what if the old normal's gone? Can we improvise on that swingy tune that Howard played and invite us all to dance? The answer does not lie with me as your minister of transition or in your new next minister. This isn't a Lone Ranger story. It doesn't even lie in your current board or your next board. The answer lies in the calling of God. A calling that we can each, every one of us, tune our hearts to hear. A calling that may be articulated by one of you, but that will only take shape if it resonates with the deeper rumblings of our whole community. So it's time to rumble, Jubilee. There has been a divine stirring of the waters. And in the gospel story of the pool of Bethesda, it's only when the waters are stirred up that the healing happens. When the world gets more chaotic, it's time to get more still. To ask, what is mine to do? Each of us, what is mine to do? To listen for those whisperings of the Spirit. To wade in that water, that troubled water. The truth is, the status quo was not working for everyone, and it was certainly not working for our planet. It desperately needed to be disrupted. God is troubling our waters. Do we have the courage to wade in? To wade in the waters. Wade in the troubled waters. Wade in the water. Daniel, I think God's going to trouble the waters.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What an amazing message today. Wow, I'm getting some weird feedback, y'all. Hang on, I'm going to mute myself. All right. So it is such a powerful message, and it's so powerful to be with y'all. It's so great to see so many of you, Kitty and Jerry and David and Jessica and Chaz and just this whole crowd of Jubilee. And we love this place. many of us, even though we're on Zoom, still find Sunday morning message really powerful for our week, and just such a joy to connect with community. And we can only be here because of you showing up and because of you pledging. So thank you to all of you who continue to fulfill your pledge. And thank you to all of you who throw in money each week as part of the bowls that go around, figuratively. So that we're passing the bowls right now, and how we do that is you can go online and click the link, or you can go to the app, or you can text, or you can snail mail. It's all in the chat on how to keep Jubilee thriving during these times. So some things that are going on at Jubilee for you to know about is the family of Bill Westcott invites friends and jubilants to his celebration of life on November 1st, which is All Saints Day. It's at 1 p.m. There'll be a Zoom link. And Bill, many of you know him. He was a longtime jubilant and involved in our community in many, many ways. And so it'll be wonderful to be able to come together and remember him. Also, this is our big push. We've been pushing it for months now, but some of us might feel a little atrophied, but some of us might feel really impassioned right now to get involved with the elections. We can put our anxiety into action in 1,001 ways, from phone banking to helping people to the polls. So make sure you get involved, and there's ways to participate in the chat. Also, during and around the elections, there are a bunch of spiritual leaders and musicians coming together to hold balance in uncertain times. So it will start November 1st and go through November 6th, and it's just 30 minutes at 5 o'clock every night via Zoom. We'll have a minister from various traditions lead a prayer, a musician sing a song, and then a meditation leader from the community lead us in meditation. So it's just a powerful way to hold space around the elections, hold space for love and harmony. There's that St. Francis of Assisi quote, where there's hatred, let us sow love. And so let us be the inherent goodness and forgiveness in the world during these times. So please join that. There's a link to register in the chat. And also, we've been putting out this invitation to jubilants to say, who wants to host small gatherings so we can start to connect again? And Vineet and Rajo Allen put out a request. So they're going to have 12 people come to their house for the Day of the Dead. It's a bonfire at 7:30. There's an optional potluck at 6. That'll be outside. For more information, and if you want to be one of those people that attends, please email Vineet, and his email is in the chat. And if you want to host a similar small gathering to get connected with other jubilants, please email me, which is also in the chat. The racial justice team is inviting you to make some public comments to to reinstate the open live public comment process. So there's an email address for more information on that. And we are, the last couple of weeks, we've been doing this fundraising project 144, and lots of you chose numbers, and some of you chose numbers and didn't actually donate. So we're just a reminder to please donate. The PayPal link is in the chat as well. And then remember to save the date for the Earth and Awe amazing presentation starting in November for Mondays. And then lastly, we're still looking for a volunteer. We have a Google ad grant, which gives us $10,000 a month to reach out to people and let them know about Jubilee. And we're looking for someone to manage that. So if you are wanting to jumpstart your communications career, or you're retired and just looking for something to do, email Michelle. So there's lots and lots of ways to get involved with this community and even beyond, and we'll keep telling you about it as we know. And it's such an important part of what Jubilee is getting involved in social justice and so much more. So that's Jubilee in action. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jackie. Here we are. Sing it up. We are here. Sing on, come on, y'all. We are here for all of us. So much better when you sing. We are here for all of us. That's why we are here. We are here for all of us. here, while we are here, we are here.
Woo! What a day. All right, loves. As some of you said, Joslin, Jazzus. We are crushing this grape year. You guys are full of it, and I love all of you. And
that was a little sour.
I send you guys out into this world and this week knowing that the power is in you and with you and around you and through you, and nothing can turn you around or stop you from getting into good trouble. So let's go do it in lots of love and lots of peace. And let's sing, and then please stay around and meet each other in the chat rooms. Sing us out, Daniel.
All right. Get those words up there. So we can sing together. Today is about joy. Each week is a little bit different.
Here
we go. Joy from you. All right, here we go. Joy from you to me. Joy that sets us free. Joy from me to you. Joy keeps moving through. It's the river of love. And it flows on through. We're the river of love. Let it wash through you. It's the river of love, and it flows on through. We're the river of love. Let it wash through you. Most beautiful sound I've ever heard.
Awesome. I want to see faces.
Look.
Oh.
What does that say?
Do you want to join a room?
Oh, no.